I'm ready. I'm born ready. I'm born spaghetti.
Okay, so apparently it is a 1 hour long Dry Arabia game here, French and Mongols, and we are
Well, we've got a lot of
jumping in.
catching up to do then, Lidakor. Let's hop into it because we're only 31 minutes into the game, but here we go. Knuschelbär versus Kasva, deciding game to decide who's going to head through to the semifinals to face off against Puppy Paw. And we open into it with Mongols versus French, but deep in the game already. The tech ups are coming out, and as you can see, Knuschelbär makes his way up with Imperial. Kasva,
okay, there we go.
behind. You good?
Okay,
You feeling good?
there we go. Image is back. Let's go. Oh,
All right.
Big push coming in here from Kasva, and look at that. It's just wiping out everything from the battlefield. Crossbows pushing in. Starting down center is Khan out there, but the Red Palace is holding strong. That is the last landmark standing, actually.
Yeah, and the outpost crawl continues. Kasva just trying to stabilize right now, going for a composite spearman and crossbowman, which is good enough to just keep the siege going. That's all he needs to rely upon to get in here. And right now, Knuschelbär isn't stabilizing. Look at this popcap situation. Down at 40 military, 121 eco should stabilize him long term, but Kasva heavy into the aggression here. A 50-50 split between eco and military to keep him going. And as he continues in, the trebuchets are onto the Red Palace. Red Palace will last a long time, and the crossbows will deter in the meantime. And with the arbaletiers there, with the pieces being dropped down, he should be able to trade out well against the springles and the crossbows. But long term, this is crawling forward for Kasva. You see he's moving on the outpost here. Needs to look on the sacred sites though, because one big mistake being made right now is he doesn't have wall ups there, he doesn't have control, which means every time he tries to cap on the north and south side, Knuschelbär is able to move out with 1 or 2 knights and decap to block that win condition. Kasva still's hard stuck here, just trying to grind his way in. Has to worry about the TC, has to worry about the Red Pass. It's not as easy as just taking out one landmark to end this.
Non-stop repairs coming in here from Knuschelbär, actually. Like, that landmark was under fire for a long time. Actually gets the Royal Institute back online over here, so he's back to 2 landmarks. And he's slowly pushing out with the cannon. He's pushing out with the springboards out there. That is not a Royal Cannon, that's just a standard cannon out there for us. And guess what? He's cleaning up that tower crawl. All that worked for Kasva for nothing here, because it is Knuschelbär who's pushing out. Kasva dropping in population down to just 160. He's running out of wood out there, and suddenly Kasva is the one who is looking pretty grim, because his numbers are just not there anymore. Knuschelbär now coming in with those Royal Knights, fully buffed Royal Knights out there, and the raids starting to intensify over here. Knuschelbär crawling back into this game. Players head-to-head in population, 150 apiece.
Oh, I'm feeling the need for speed, Lidakor, because we are juicing in, but Kasva, he's not so speedy anymore. He's losing the YAM network, the outposts are starting to be crumbled down, and that means he's losing min-map tempo control, and the dives are coming in from Knuschelbär. As he moves in the pasture district, you have to keep in mind, the issue with the Mongols here is they condense all their eco around the White Stupa, as well as around the primary TCs. If you get shut down there, food's going to suffer, and you can see that right now. Kasva is not building up surplus. He has nothing in the bag. He's going to struggle to replace these hefty costs into the spearman, into the crossbow to keep this push going, especially now that he's diversifying into the hand cannoneers. That's going to increase the cost here. Knuschelbär quickly gaining ground and looking towards those sacred sites. Already has control of 2 in the north, needs to get on the south side. And notice how quickly complete control has shifted towards Knuschelbär. As we move into the late game, we start to see how dominant the French can become in an Imperial matchup against the Mongols.
Kasva just going for full spearman over here. He's up to 76 of those. Massacred a lot of gold miners down to the south from Knuschelbär. Knuschelbär could be constrained on gold over here. And keep in mind, spearman hand cannoneer, deadly combination over here. There is not a single Mongol, not a single Bodequin out there for Knuschelbär to deal with that. And now this Kasva once again putting on the cruise control up to 193 population as opposed to 130. That lack of gold for Knuschelbär slowed him down quite a bit. Knights are gone from the battlefield. He's switching back into horsemen, but fighting that against the spearman could be very concerning over here. And what are you seeing, KP?
It's a step readout. It's a step readout. Lidakor is down, which means Kasva's hand is heavily discounted. He's going to rely primarily on spearmen, archers, and horsemen. Sounds pretty good if you can do it in unlimited quantities, but right now his military district isn't big enough to keep up with these numbers. You can see at the moment, though, he's taking initial good fights, and this is hurting Knuschelbär. Knuschelbär is going down quantitatively, and it looks like he got raided hard on the eco side. As he shifts out of his corner into the midfield, he becomes exposed to this aggression. You can see it already. If you think about where his eco count was, now down to around 90, doesn't feel good, but he is trying to rebuild with a quality army solution here. The issue I see, however, is the Yams coming in, the gap close, the choke point hold as well, allows Kasva to once again buffer him back, and Knuschelbär is drying up in the resource department. Everything has been depleted here, and in this situation, this is where I start to look at the relics and wonder, can Knuschelbär hold on? Because although he might have the guild hall behind him, it's been crumbling for a long time, and one player has all relics while one only has one.
It's a Royal Institute. He doesn't have the guild hall behind him.
You're right.
He just has the relics to face against. He's going to run out of gold over here at this space, and Kasva just pushing deeper and deeper. A swarm of spearmen, like a swarm of bees coming out there. Now Kasva securing the southern part of the map over here. 77 army back on the field though for Knuschelbär. Mostly building up the horsemen, and those horsemen are just going into Kasva's base here. They're going for the eco over here once again, just using the fact that the Mongols simply can't wall in there. Once again pressuring that step redoubt that now has been rebuilt. But how do you deal with that many spearmen when you have mostly just horsemen on the battlefield? The response coming in here from Knuschelbär is gonna be the arbaletier. He's up up to 64 of those fights all across the map over here as both players are getting closer and closer back to 200 population. Non-stop slaughter as we reach that 1 hour mark over here, still going deeper and deeper. Traders now being added by Kasva over there. Oh, what a crazy game out there.
It's getting crazy right now. From My Little Pony to My Little Pew Pew, the Arbitrator heavily relying upon him here. Knuschelbär needs to be a little bit careful about this as he pushes in. The hand cannoneers are back in the mixer, and Kasva able to get the good trades. Look how quickly the crossbows go down. Full retreat, Knuschelbär giving over a lot of ground here. Horseman not able to keep up. He's trying to switch over to cannons, but he can barely afford these, and the raid in deep. Kasva scouts out the lay of the land and understands that a second wave is not coming anytime soon. Knuschelbär is struggling to keep up with the demand of this war, and Kasva is quickly gaining ground as he's always a pop cap, and this is why. Knuschelbär, he's sacrificed military aggression. He's sacrificed presence in the midfield to try and get trade online. The issue with this, though, is he's trading to the south side, and if Kasva notices, if he shuts it down, Knuschelbär is completely shut out this game.
Knuschelbär switching back into the Royal Knights though, and most of the army right now for Kasva is just archers. Some of the hand cannoneers as well. Spearman numbers have decreased quite massively though. A quick switch into Royal Knights could easily turn the tanks around over here. Populations, though, massively in the favor of Kasva over here. He's at 190 as opposed to 160. Population, though, crawling back over here for Knuschelbär. He's breaking out with all the arbaletier, slowly adding some more horsemen over here, and looks like we are caught up over here. 1 hour, 6 minutes into this one. Decider game between Knuschelbär and Kasva in the quarterfinals of the second weekend of the event. We're finally back online with this one, and we can now continue to cast this one at real-time speed. Oh, it's a relief, man, because so many things happening over here. Casting late game at 8 times speed is just an absolute madness, and this game is here to stay. Like, this game could easily go on for another hour, simply because right now you're looking at Knuschelbär with a good trade setup, 85 army on the battlefield, decent map control. Kasva also has trade, he also has the 4 relics out there. Both players still pop-capped. This could easily end up being a 2-hour-long game.
So, just to clarify, what you're saying, Lidakor, is that we should pause the game for an hour, go to a break, come back, and then round this one out. Because it's clearly going to go 2 hours. They're both in a trade. They're pro-guarded. Well, on both sides. And aren't actually assaulting that area either. One interesting thing to think about here, by the way, is that in this matchup, like, if both players get online with trade, I'd say they're pretty neck and neck. Because, you know, the Mongols, they get additional resources on trade, and the French can choose what they trade for. So, if there was any matchup that could go 3 hours, Lidakor, on any map, I think we might have them, especially with the players involved.
Well, I beg to differ, to be honest, because one thing that we overlooked as we were speedcasting this one is that in the recent minutes, Kasva built up a massive eco. This is probably just the artifact of you building up the trade, but also not deleting villagers behind this. So he's up to 150 eco, which limits his ability to add army over here, and we're looking at 65 army against 98. And Knuschelbär is getting close to pushing this. Kasva needs to replace some villagers with just available population space for army, because right now, he's full spearman, and he's facing arbaletier. More importantly, Knuschelbär is mixing in some archers, so now he has a good response to all those spearmen. You still have those towers out there, but as weird as it sounds like right now, for Kasva, it's a blessing rather than a curse that he's losing villagers on the north, because he desperately needs more population space. You want to get close to that like 50-50 split of your population room in army and eco department, as compared to like that 60-40 that Kasva has right now.
I think it's the natural overboom that we see happen when you switch over to trade, because you can't just get rid of all the villagers. You need to get enough of the trade to say, I have reserves, I can take this risk. And I think that's where we're at for Kasva. The problem is, the timing can be worse. Knuschelbär is starting to move in the north side, and that's going to expose the trade route. And once that shuts down, Kasva might shut down alongside it. He has to fight soon. The issue I see is if he's drawn to the north, Knuschelbär is the aggressor, playing half cavalry. What do you think he's going to do, Lidakor? If you turn all your attention with a static force to the north side, does that not expose the remaining villager count you have back in your base?
Honestly, like, my response to this is that you don't care about the villager count, you care about the trader count, because as this game goes deeper, it's going to be all about those traders. Yeah, sure thing, like, your food eco, that is fine, like, that's important. I agree with you on that one, but it's going to come down to the trade, because those traders are your lifeline right now. And that is something that you're gonna have to protect at all costs, essentially. Right now, population's looking better for Kasva. He's cleaning up a substantial army over here. But if those horsemen get themselves like 10 traders killed here, it's a trade that Knuschelbär is gonna be at least alright with, even if he's not gonna be happy with it. He still needs to find a way to deal with the spearmen, though.
He's going for the main clump. He's essentially Congo-lying to death right now. He's not going for the traders. Instead, he just keeps throwing away more into this spear clump, and he's pushing cavalry into that. I don't know how you convince these knights to ride into that one by one, but like, you have to be the most charismatic leader in the world to achieve that. Because I wouldn't agree to that. I think most reasonable people would be like, no, you don't pay me enough for that. Like, if you ask me to attack a donkey, totally more reasonable.
Yeah, as Core is pointing out to us, because obviously we were speedcasting the last couple of minutes, well, not the last couple of minutes, actually the last 30 minutes, we didn't have the chance to assess some of the things that are out there on the map. For example, the fact that Kasva was relying very heavily on gunpowder units, hand cannoneers. Wait a minute, look, Core, get close to that Mongol TC. I just want to see how many carcasses we have out there, because I feel like that's like mature content over here. Like, kids, look away. What even is that?
Oh god, look at the meat pies. This is something I always like to point. Like, it's insane. That's just 84. Lidakor, what is the most sheep carcasses you've seen stacked on top of each other in a game of Age of Empires?
I would say 84. I mean, this is a first to me.
I've watched a mega random where someone had 300. It looked like the world's biggest hamburger. It actually looks horrifying to watch, and it has horrifying ramifications actually, because if there's a crime that practically every Mongol player is guilty of, it's putting all of his food eco on one spot, because they always waypoint those sheep to one spot. So if you ever get pushed off that one spot, that's pretty much a GG point for Mongols.
Yeah, and this is something you pointed out yesterday, that you want to spread out your pastures a tiny bit, and if you think about that, sure thing, you would lose the buff of Divide Stupa, for example, but you have 84 carcasses under your town center, and the number is actually growing rather than shrinking, so you can easily get away with placing 10 of these pastures elsewhere for some backup out there. It also, you know, reduces the clumping of those villagers out there, which reduces the efficiency. But speaking of efficiency out there, Kasva has been very efficient with his army, despite not having chemistry on his army that contains quite a lot of gunpowder units. He's slowly pushing in, and you see, one of the things that's still a position of strength for Kasva here from many aspects is that he does have the 4 relics, and more importantly, he's got the majority map control out there with the army he has, and in a long game, that's what matters the most. I think he also has a good number of traders set up. Core has shown us, I think it was something like 30s. I don't think Knuschelbär has that many traders. He probably has number in the domain of like 20s. Yeah, 35?
I'd say it's like, yeah, 35, and then I'd expect Knuschelbär to be...
Yeah, it's actually a lot worse than that for Knusch.
Yeah, because I think he got cut off. Like, if you look at the south side, you can see that it was exposed. In fact, I believe there was actually infrastructure down there originally from Kasva, as he may have originally planned to trade with that same corner.
I think Kasva might actually be tower rushing it right now. I don't know, because obviously there's a lot of things happening out here, and when you're casting live, you have the time to assess it, right?
Nah. You can assess it in 8 times. If we could just get back to 8, is that possible? Okay.
No, please no. All right, Horseman finally coming in for Kasva, and like, we have seen more and more that cavalry can be the deciding factor in these long and sluggish games, because it's gonna come down to who can charge him with the cavalry, and for a long time we haven't seen Kasva using heavy cavalry. He is back to those knights or lancers, and those are Mongol lancers, potentially with improved upgrades as well, which make them a very nice counterpart of the French fully upgraded Royal Knights in Imperial.
So one really scary part for me in this matchup, I usually think the French do quite well against the Mongols Imperial, but with their playstyles and the way they've carved the map now, I think it slightly pivots back towards the Mongols. And the key difference is stone. Outposts become so valuable now with cannons spamming around the map, and the issue for Knuschelbär is because he hasn't got a lot of trade online, he hasn't got crap tons of stone coming in. He could toggle it for it, and it would be a good play here, because as you keep going back and forth, as you get drained down to the bone, the difference in the fact that Kasva's always going to have a steady slew of stone coming in is going to allow him to be back in this game where it was when we joined it, right? Where he was sitting outside of Knuschelbär's base with what felt like 1,000,001 outposts camping. And
the tower crawl of the Mongols is a dangerous thing even in Castle Age, but when you get to Imperial, that's where it really comes online, because as you pointed out, Mongol trade brings you stone, which means you can constantly turn that into weapon emplacements, and the French don't have that power. That is because Knuschelbär decided to go with the Royal Institute. Now, looking back to the game, he did that because he was under so much pressure that he desperately needed those key upgrades in Castle Age, as compared to grabbing it in Imperial. But now that we have gotten to this late game part, you're seeing why the Royal Institute is, you know, a little troublesome if you get to late game. It is because you don't have the guild hall working for your late game, and I love how Kasva has improved the bounty upgrades as well. You could see that for every single building set on fire, he's being paid 75 stone. Think about how many bombard emplacements could you get from it.
It's actually crazy to think about. Like, on top of that, another thing to consider here, shout out to our boy Core, like, for already stepping up on day one on the spectating side of things. He noticed that there is no university for Knuschelbär. So he's at a sheer tech disadvantage right now. And that's scary to think about. In some ways, it's not the end of the world because he at least has royal bloodlines. but it still stings.
Yeah, like incendiary arrows missing is actually a big hit to those arbaletriae, actually. Now, truth be told, chemistry is missing on the side of Kasva as well, despite using quite a lot of hand cannoneers, so I guess it's 1-1. But that is where things get interesting. You see, towers are slowly building up, and you get the feel that Knuschelbär is running out of juice over here. Kasva has been throwing army at him for the last 1 hour over here. And Kasva's very close to winning that game. You see that I think we had just one landmark. The red palace standing for Knuschelbär. He couldn't finish the game, but I get the feel that now attrition is coming in, and Kasva, he often plays very long games like this. He's not shying away from playing a game of attrition, and Knuschelbär, you get the feel that he's running out of juice here. We also have to highlight he's an AOE3 player, and I'm not super familiar with AOE3, but it is not a game that has a tremendous amount of games going 5 hour long in the 1v1 competitive scene, I believe. So this late game slugfest is something that Kasva is a lot more familiar with. In fact, Kasva is, I think, like if you would take a look at the high level players in AOE2 and check who plays on average the longest games on open maps, I think Kasva will be in the top 5.
That wouldn't surprise me. Like, I think Kasva's very comfortable right now in the hyper late game as well as the other game. I think the thing that like maybe your Marine Lords and BCs can somewhat get the better of him more than not is the mid game, but we're far past the mid game, folks. 1 hour and 16 minutes in. The issue that Knuschelbär has is locationless assault as well. It's going to expose a lot of his production line. You can see a keep just off screen to the north side. It's going to be blocked out, and look at that. Chemistry is now ready to come out for Kasva, and once that arrives in this battlefield with a mixture of the bombars, the gunpowder units that he's relying on with the hand cannons as well, Kasva's already gaining ground as it is. This is going to catapult him all the way into Knuschelbär's base.
And you see why. Knuschelbär is completely out of gold. He has banged up 7,000 food. He's got 2,000 wood as well, but simply no gold. 200 gold per minute is his gold income that's mostly coming from just one key relic. The trade is essentially gone from him, and you see that this is going to start snowballing out of control because you not having army on the battlefield right now allows Kasva to gain more ground, allows him to crawl closer and closer to your trade, and once that trade is gone, you're gonna be in trouble because obviously you're gonna have no access to gold. And French late game, it's among the weaker ones, or at least it's debated, but it's definitely not considered very powerful as compared to some other civilizations. But when you are without gold late game in French, that's where it really becomes underwhelming.
Yeah, and the tough part is like you kind of have to find a way in the situation to sacrifice the arbitrary production to afford something more food-based, I think, to make room for the mangonels. I actually like the Knuschelbär's gone mangonels. I just question whether it's a little bit too late. Like if he'd done this sooner while he still maintained this foreground, he possibly also has time to then start setting up the trade properly. But now it's like non-stop aggression. Now it's Knuschelbär always trying to reproduce the 200, and though he finally reaches it, what did he sacrifice to this? He sacrificed the keep, he sacrificed the fort infrastructure, and that's normally bad in itself at this stage of the game. The extra detail is a problem is Kasva is now going to plant more outposts in this area with more cannon emplacements.
Now, the amount of wood that the players have access to could still be something that's worth monitoring because that could be a thing in late game, but we talk about that later. We have a big fight coming up here. Horsemen coming in. Where are the spearmen?
Well, he doesn't need Spearman apparently, he just needs boom booms all around the place, and a big boom boom for Knuschelbär on the backside. Mangonels go down, Archer Battalion goes down, Archers on the side of Kasva alongside the hand cannoneers stand their ground because as we all know, gun beat horse.
Yeah, that's historically confirmed for sure, indeed. And now that hand cannoneer mass is massive, and those mangonels are gone from Knuschelbär, he invested a ton of his very valuable gold into those mangonels. They're all gone, and now you do have the hand cannoneers pushing deeper and deeper. The Red Palace is now within sight. One has to wonder whether Knuschelbär actually repaired his previous landmarks. Looks like the starting town center is up and the School of Cavalry as well. So Kasva, he's gonna have to get through all of those landmarks out there, but we're getting closer and closer to the point where he can once again start thinking about shelling those buildings with trebuchets, and Knuschelbär is setting himself up for a defense here with springboards. We are back where we were like 40 minutes ago, where Kasva was so close to breaking Knuschelbär's resistance. Can he do it for a second time? That's the question.
He looks broken now. Like, his military count is not impressive. Lidakor is about to go into single digits in a second here if he's not careful. And also now the production line. Like, remember when he's holding before? He had the flanks pushing units. One of those flanks is gone now. The center is starting to be exposed. Now, the only upside for him is Kasva only has a single bombard. But if he fixes that, if he goes up to 3 or 4, this is kind of done. And the thing I love that Kaz is doing is look what he's doing with the Horseman now. He's diving into the trade. He understands the only way that Knuschelbär recovers is off trade. So he's going to take it off the table. He's going to take it out of the equation. And that stage, Knuschelbär won't be able to afford any new units. He can't afford to stay in this game. GG will get called. It took over an hour, but Kasva will proceed through, facing off against Puppyport in the semifinals.
I mean, Kaz was getting used to playing these super late game scenarios. He did that yesterday against Beastie as well. He had a very long, I think an hour plus long Danube River game. I think he ended up losing that to Beastie QT, but ultimately ended up winning the set. And now it's becoming a regularity that you look at a Kasva set and you know it's gonna be like 2 hours delayed compared to the others, because he just plays so many of these long games, over 100,000 food gathered on both sides over here. But you can probably notice the difference between the two. First of all, 10,000 extra stone for Kasva, most of that going into weapon emplacements and double training. 20,000 more gold as well. His longevity was massive, and if you think about that, this map or this game went into like an hour and 20-minute long game. Kasva had 4 relics the whole time. This is why it cannot be understated how important it is to gather the relics over here. Even if you think that you are going to win this game in 15-20 minutes, getting the relics can have a massive impact, because if anything falls apart with your plans, if anything doesn't work out, you can't win the game, and you potentially get into that late game scenario, grabbing those relics is key. And this is why you see the likes of Viper, for example, going so crazily focused on the relics. Like, first thing that they do, regardless of the civilization they use, when they get to Castle Age, pick up the relics with a monastery that's being built right when you hit Castle Age, because it can be so valuable. If you do the quick math on that, let's say you get the relics, 4 relics for an hour, how much gold is that, KP?
4 relics for an, oh god. Well, you're going to get your hands on 400 a minute, so you're just going to times that by 60, so...
That's 24,000.
It's a ludicrous amount. It's 24,000. It's
essentially the difference between the two, right?
Obviously, he didn't get we don't know exactly when he got him. It might have been delayed, but I imagine like Mongol players, as they are, like as soon as they go castle, you know how greedy they are. They're getting into that. So I think by 25 minutes maximum, he would have had those 4 relics, and that's scary to think about. Like the other crazy thing is like this game goes on is that we used to say the Mongols were at a disadvantage against the French in like the hyper late. That was kind of the consensus. And the main detail was the guild hall. Well, that's already a problem because he went Royal Institute.